Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Long Box. I'm here with Bill Williams. How you doing, Bill?
I'm good. How are you?
Did you see you got added into the trailer this time around?
I did. I
Yeah,
saw my mug flash there for a second.
yeah. I was like, why? When I went to get the second trailer, I was like, we forgot poor Bill. You know,
Uh,
and for those of you who don't know, this is Bill Williams. He's among other things, he's the letterer for my comic Heroic Tales, and I have to say, pros said that the lettering is outstanding. Who's my letterer? So I've been recommending you. I hope that leads to some money in your pocket.
that's awesome. I think I misunderstood a guy I was talking to today. Today I was talking to a new client and I said, "Yeah, John said he was recommending me blah 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 blah." And I did that a couple of times. He goes, "No, no, I heard about you from Ben Dunn. I'm based out of Dallas. I saw him the last week." I'm like, "Oh, all right. However, I'm getting work. I'm happy with that."
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, because
Yeah.
uh, uh, I had a friend that was making a comic, and he went through a bunch of different letterers, and oh my god, it was just awful.
Yeah.
And it again, it's a skill. It's a profession. It's a professional quality level thing. Like, you don't hire an electrician to do a plumbing. You don't hire a plumber to do carpentry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so I was like, I could do it. I could do it, and I tried to do it. Oh my god. So it
Most most people could do it.
right.
But, the same way I can play tennis. I
Right.
haven't played since high school,
I
but
could
I
be
would
a
get my ass
quarterback.
kicked. Yeah.
I could be a quarterback.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm physically capable of doing it. I'm just no good.
yeah. This was sort of the advice I gave to my new client, not that I'm trying to get fired, but I told him, that I wanted to have more control of the content that I was creating, and I wanted to, be a little bit more involved in the creative process. And these things, I'm already doing the writing and the inking on a lot of them. I thought, maybe I should do the lettering too, because it helps with the rewrite. So I went to Comics Experience and took a $400 lettering class from Dave Sharp, and it took me, I learned the basics there, and then it took me a couple of years polishing them before I was happy working for other people.
Oh,
But
yeah.
now I work for other clients and, letter my own stuff and, have a good time with it.
Yeah, Mike Barron was just like, your lettering is really good. I was like, that's Bill Williams. So you know,
I've flirted working with Mike a couple of times.
yeah.
At one point before his little empire exploded, we were talking about doing a Punchline Nexus book, and I have a beat sheet for that written out somewhere.
Oh,
But
cool.
I think that ship may have sailed. He's doing a ton of Nexus stuff, so I
Yeah.
think it would work if Matt drew it, but I'm not sure if Matt's got time.
It's a good thing you charge by the page, because Mike is very sparse with the words. If you charge
Yes,
by the words,
I write a lot like that. There are times when people have to explain what everybody's doing, and then there's time where the graphics just drive the story. I was doing the final production work on Punchline 16 today, and in some cases I'm wordy, and in some cases stuff just happens.
what's funny for me. I'm a guy that talks a lot. I don't know if you saw me on Kitty Flips last night. All she basically did was say hello, and I talked for about 2 hours.
That's
But
great if you're a host, though. You can, sit back and have some coffee.
it's yeah. She said that, she goes, you're like the easiest guest ever. Just
Mhm.
here you go. But I mean, at the beginning, if you watch the beginning, much I talked over all my guests. I'm
Yeah,
surprised a lot of people came back. So that's why I like to see people's faces, so I know if
yeah.
I'm. But anyway, for a guy who talks a lot, I'm struggling to fill a page with words. Like I think it's funny, because Mike Barron said I used too many words in issue number one, but everybody else who's not Mike Barron said I didn't put in enough captions, dialogue, whatever. So I don't know. I kind of like the art to tell most of the story.
There's a way to write comics. Anytime you get great comics, you've obviously done something right. But if you compare the comics from the 1960s to the comics now, comics in the 1960s, you would have a 9 panel page of the early X-Men stuff, and everybody's delivering this long-winded diatribe. Compared to now, You'll have a 3-panel page where people are basically repeating their mission statement as they just beat the crap out of each other. So
Yeah,
the style and what's popular has changed a whole lot. In my case, I try to make sure I'm trying to take a cue from acting. I'm trying to make sure that everybody in the scene is kind of present in the scene. So there's an upcoming punchline story where Versima flies up to meet Mel, and she's bringing a couple of cups of coffee. And Versima's opening line is, "I'm just so mad at you, I could spit." And Mel's like, "Should I check my coffee? What's going on?" She's like, "Oh no, no. Here's why I'm mad at you. You blah blah blah." Mel's like, "Well, that sounds like something I'd do, but to have kind of a natural sounding dialogue between two people,
it's harder than you
that's the
think.
story." Yes.
For those of you who didn't do it, it's harder than you think.
Yeah.
I talk a lot. I have conversations all day long, but when all the people talking are characters in my head, it's weird. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
does sound like you're ready for the mental institution.
yeah. Like, how,
We put it to vote and I have to go.
yeah. It's rough. Um, so since you brought up Punchline, I'm a big fan of this comic. I told the story a few times, but I made up Heroic Tales, and then I forget who it was, but somebody who's been watching my channel for a long time was just like, there already was a Heroic Tales comic.
There was a golden age and then a, sort of modern age.
Right. So I was just like, oh man, this is like my third title, and I started to get discouraged. So I reached out to you, and you were really nice and everything. And then I heard a nasty rumor that bothered me. They're like, Bill Williams basically strong armed you to be the letter. I was like, no, I saw his lettering. you know,
Yeah.
if you, yeah, you, Bill Williams strong armed me to make my comic better.
You know, anytime you try to strong arm somebody into a relationship, you're just begging for heartache. So do
It's
not
funny
do
that you
that.
said that. I was just talking to an apprentice at work about girls. I said, if you ask out a girl and it's anything but if an enthusiastic yes, it's a no. So
Yes.
yeah, you know,
Maybe's a no. No is a no. There's a lot of kinds of no's.
right. And even a yeah, okay, is you don't want So here we go. This is John's long box. Love advice and comic books. Here we go.
Love advice from a couple of old dudes.
Yeah,
Not sure how well that's going to go over.
I'm married 22 years. I'm doing something right.
Yeah. I
I
have a
even got
pet.
I got a pet. I even got a compliment the other day. After 5 years of marriage, to get a comp. My wife hates when I say that. She gets so mad. I'm going to be quiet. You can probably hear me. I compliment you.
I just, don't do it to people.
So, said anyway. We started working together, and you sent me a PDF of your comic Punchline, which unfortunately, as much as I pay attention to comics, I missed like the first 3 or 4 issues,
Yeah.
and I was like, I don't want to read a PDF. I don't want to, but I felt
Yeah.
like I should. I'm working with this guy. I read it. I sat right here and I read it all in one shot. I ordered all the comics. I'm up to date. I'm back at all these. I really like the comic. It has like 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 at the risk of flattering myself, it feels like it could fit in my world. You know what I
It
mean?
could.
It
Yeah.
has all the sensibilities that I like about and it breaks my rules too. I'll talk about that later. But you know, Jimi Hendrix breaks the rules of playing instruments too. So
Yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to write something high concept, and I pitched that first to Matt, and then I got a blank stare, and then I pitched him something else. He's like, "Oh, let's go back to the superhero thing." And
something worse. Okay, we'll go back to the good one.
you got to do that. I mean, you got to show up if you've got the chance to pitch something to either somebody in a position to hire you or somebody that you want to work with. You have to have two or three things in your pocket. If you just show up with one idea, you're a person with one idea, and that's really hard to pull off. It better be the best idea in the whole world. But in my case, I pitched the idea, and I said, at the end of the day, it's got some odd couple DNA in it. It's a little bit like Lethal Weapon. It's two people that have to work together that don't really like each other at first, but then they get used to it along the way. It's a very classic Hollywood construction for the reason that it usually works.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's kind of derogatory term to say like, oh, your comic is a Netflix pitch. Now, I don't see your comic as a Netflix pitch, but I do
Yeah,
see it would be a successful Netflix series, or maybe like 3 movies or something like that.
yeah,
It's like you said, it's well, you got experience with film writing and acting and stuff like that
a
too.
little
So,
bit. Not acting because I choke pretty quickly.
oh, I
But
thought you acted.
no,
Oh, so we have that
I
in common. I acted once and it was excruciating to the point I never told anybody I did it for about 10 to 15 years.
it is very tough to be on camera. In our case, we did have somebody option Punchline,
Oh,
and it was in production for a while, and it was by the people who were doing the Warrior Nun book, the Warrior Nun TV show. And I watched some of those, and I can see what they were trying to do, and I liked parts of it. I thought the actress was great, but the rest of it, you know, could have used a little
the
help.
actress for Warrior Nun, or did they actually select an actress for Punchline for
No,
Versimo?
the actress for Warrior Nun.
Okay.
So he found a writer who was very interesting, and when uh, he wrote it very smartly. It lost all the superheroics. It was basically a cross between Buffy the Vampire Slayer and John Wick, and the magic blood was in there. And then there was talk about uh, there was that the only scene that made it from the first few issues is that scene where the two women sit in the cemetery where it's ball freezing cold and one of them's dying. That's about it. Um, in that pitch, I think somebody shoots at the Mel-ish character and splatters some of the magic blood onto uh, her future protege. So that happens by accident instead of good intention. So it was pretty bold, and it was very well written, and the writer had the balls to do something I wouldn't have done, which was a bunch of professional killers show up at this girl's school, and there's a shoot up at a school as she's running for her life, where you know cops and people are just getting mowed down right and left. I'm like, damn, I want to watch this show, but I don't know if I would have the
Yeah,
nerve to be able to sell it. But
yeah, yeah. I
that
thought of scenes, and I'm like, I don't feel comfortable writing that scene.
yeah, yeah. So that did okay, and those guys are still in there pitching, but they had I think they had I don't want to say financial setback, but they wrote a bunch of stuff. They're still looking for money to raise off of it, and that's cool as long as the credits say based on a comic by Bill Williams and Matthew Weldon.
And the
I'm
check,
fine with that.
yeah, and a little
Long
bit of
as it
this.
long as the check clears. Yep.
My wife and I were just talking about the Levon Cade movie, the Chuck Dixon's movie, and
Yeah.
she, Chuck Dixon just he made a video about all the changes, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody. It's a fun movie.
Yeah.
But my wife goes, "Oh my god, that's a big change. Is he okay with that?" And I said, "Chuck is happy because they're making a sequel."
Yes.
And Chuck said this. He said the same thing that Edgar Allan Burroughs, William S. Burroughs said
Yeah.
about the Make It Lunch movie. My book's over there. They didn't do anything to my book. It's still
Yeah.
exists. It's right there on the shelf.
That's a very popular writer thing. No, my book is fine. They didn't fuck that up. They fucked up the movie.
So I got to ask you this now. I didn't know it was an option. Do you have a dream cast like in your mind? Which actresses? Because I got Versima and Mel in my mind who I would pick, but I don't want
Not
to hear
not
your
really. I don't want to say I've embargoed most filmed entertainment, but I don't watch a whole lot of movies. I don't watch a lot of TV. I've got some friends that have got me, tricked, and I'm out of the house seeing movies more. So I saw like back to back. I saw like Nosferatu and A Complete Unknown, which was a weird double feature. But I don't have those things in mind because that's not the kind of thing I can control. So I don't really
right.
think about it.
But I can't help because she's the Hollywood heartthrob right now. But Sydney Sweeney as Versima, and I can't think of the woman's name, but she played Trinity in The Matrix as Mel.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be a good fit
Yeah, that's what I picture.
because fans would pay to see her just mowing stuff down
Yeah,
with
yeah,
handguns.
yeah. They would see in a tight superhero outfit.
Yeah, yeah. in an upcoming issue, Versima accidentally finds out one of Mel's code names as a super type, and she's going to confront her about it sometime in the future.
Okay.
So,
So since you brought up code names, I know you watch my videos. You know my rules for superheroes. You know,
sort of, I see some of them. What are your rules for
so
superheroes?
well, you know, again, consider the source, and
They
I'm
should
not
make
the
sense.
source. What's that?
Yeah, they should make sense.
All right, they should make sense. Like
Yeah.
but like, uh, uh, I like a couple of guys who've been on my channel. They have different but my method is I find a name, where that name comes from, either from reading or the news, or I
Hmm.
see something at work or whatever, and I'm like, that would be a cool superhero name. Like the example that I always give is we use wood to shore up heavy things, and it's called dunnage. So it's
Yeah,
like dunnage, which sounds like a villain name, like a big wooden, Solomon Grundy type.
like the Thing or
Right, the
something like
thing,
that.
but he's a
Yeah.
bad guy and he's not too intelligent. So it that all fell from the name. And then I think of his costume and his powers, then maybe he has a symbol or not. But it all has to make sense. It all has to support that name. And Versima breaks that rule. Like, I don't even know what the word Versima means. Her costume, you know what I mean? But it works. So I'm not saying, like, a few people were like, yeah, but does it, is this an absolute rule? I said, first off, who am I to come up with an absolute rule? I'm
Yeah.
just explaining how and I always bring up Ursima as somebody who's not, well, maybe you did come up with the rule. Maybe I'm talking around,
That
but it's different to my way of thinking, but it works.
Mine and Matt's relationship sort of mirrors the Punchline relationship. So Matt brought Versima to the party, and I brought Mel to the party. He's obviously hugely in favor of drawing his character, and I like writing Mel because I identify with Mel a little bit more, right? I'm an older writer. It's easy to imagine being fired and training your replacement. In Matt's case, he likes drawing the light and bright characters, and I've got to say that I'm right there with him. I wrote a sequel to the Punchline Tomorrow Girl book, and I'm waiting to see if that's going to get greenlit or not. The problems with Diamond right now mean that not all the publishers know if they're going to have distribution next year. So it's hard to greenlight something and say, "Hey, we just dumped a bunch of money into this project and we have no way to get it into stores." So, that thing, I wrote the first one as kind of another Super Friends kind of thing. A whole bunch of people get together to fight the bad guys. In this case, it's pretty much just Tomorrow Girl and Versima fighting variations on the Gridlock character from Punchline 9.
Yeah, you got some good villains too. And they follow the rule. Gridlock is exactly what you want them to, it's really cool.
Yep.
And you expand, like, Versima, it's every issue it's like you're peeling away at the onion. You're revealing more and more. Like, I don't want to spoil it. It's your comic, but like,
For 1 through 5, that first story is about the relationship, fractured as it is between Mel and her protege. And then 6 through 10 is kind of a Brave and the Bold style. There's a new character every issue. And then you've got a couple of issues where Versima takes her final test and she's in the club, and Mel is well and truly fired. I'm like, all right, what do we do after that? Matt wrote and drew a couple of issues after this. In this case, starting with 16, we started doing some callbacks. So there's a villain that shows up in 16, previously seen in this issue. In 17, we see what happens after Gridlock got captured in Punchline 9. We see, since I didn't want to write monologues or have a shit ton of captions in there, I knew that Versima had somebody else she had to play with. So she and the Atomic Butterfly character are going to be buddies and patrolling and fighting bad guys all around Seahome. So, I think that I got a little bit off track somewhere along the way in 6 through 10, but this is a way to get more back on track, to have spotlight on these two lead characters and their peer groups.
Now, it's two female leads.
Yeah.
Does anybody like, every time you have a female comic, oh, it's woke, they're Mary Sue's, they're whatever. First off, I don't believe that in the slightest with your book. But have you heard any of that? And do you have any counter?
Not not a bit. Nobody in our book operates on a quota system. There's nobody who is disrespected in one way or another. I don't. I would not try to write something in a voice that would be demeaning to somebody's background. It's mostly an ongoing discussion about what it means to have responsibility told from two different perspectives.
Yeah, I look at Versima as a like Peter Parker.
Hmm.
She's young, she's idealistic. Maybe she's in over her head. She doesn't know. Well, not maybe. Sometimes she's over her head.
She
And and
is.
and Mel is, literally the older superhero that is training her. But Mel isn't a superhero anymore. That's not a spoiler. That's like the first issue.
Yeah.
And it's like classic. You got Yoda and Luke. You know what I mean? And then, but Luke wants to go off and save his friends and not take the advice of the mentor. It's really good. And then Mel, I don't know what it is. I just like that character. She's just like,
She's fun.
yeah,
She Okay, as much as Versima is sort of learning her way in the world, and I didn't want to write high school drama, so Jesse's going to high school and she's being a hero part time, and she's trying to figure out what's going on in the world. Mel is active and engaged and doing what she can in her world. So
and Mel
in
and Mel keeps secrets from her.
oh yeah, oh yeah,
She's again, I'm trying not to spoil your book, but Mel is doing stuff that she's keeping a secret from her
I don't
super.
want to say that I don't want to say that Mel lies to everybody, but she lies to just about everybody,
Yeah, I'm not
and
going to say she
that
lies
makes
to
it fun.
everybody, but she lies to everybody.
Yeah.
But that's her nature. She's really
Yes.
like she's not so much a superhero as like a super spy.
She's deceptive.
Yeah.
My original thought on this was, what if somebody like Modesty Blaze trained Supergirl?
Oh,
And
okay.
that's essentially, was kind of the foundation for what's going on. So in the comic book that's crowdfunding now, I talked with the guys at AP and I said, "Hey, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to produce our comics for you and have you di- uh, distribute those to the direct market." And we crowdfunded the first issue, or that's issue 16. Now in the story, Mel finds out there's a $200 million contract out on Versima. So she goes to her protege and says, "Look, I need you to stand down for a week. I can probably find out who paid this much money for this, but for that kind of money, you're going to have really good people trying to kill you.
Yeah, yeah. They're
Don't
all, yeah. Don't make
don't
yourself
don't
visible.
don't be a hero."
Yeah.
And she says, "Well, what if there's emergencies?" Well, it's just the point. They're going to cause emergencies to bring you out to take a shot at you. Like, well, hundreds of people could get hurt. Well, you'll save thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people in your career. Just, go to the
And,
beach, watch TV, whatever.
and that's what I'm talking about. Mel is willing to make hard choices where Vasima's still young and naive and she wants to save
Yes.
everybody. She wants to rescue the kitten from the tree and
Yep.
the world is perfect. And and I get a feeling in 50 years, assuming Versima is around, that she'll be like,
Yeah.
well, you know.
Well, we'll see. So that's kind of the pitch for that one. And bad guys do cause emergencies, and they're taking shots at the kid while Mel's trying to figure out who has $200 million to spare on something like that.
Yeah, that,
And it's kind of fun. It runs a bit long. It's drawn in a manga style. That center image there with the pink logo, that's the style it's drawn in. Tom Derenick did the alternate cover with her flying around, and we put some crosshairs over.
yeah, that's a great
Um,
cover.
Tom is a great artist, and he takes commissions. And I said, "Hey, man, I'd like you to do a commission for me. I'm going to use it as a cover. Does that work for you?" And he goes, "Sure." So you should do something with the patriarch or with Mary Sue.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Lots riding on my campaign right now. Me and
Yeah,
you are at the exact same number, 49 backers.
yeah.
Yeah,
We're doing things a lot differently. I'm printing a bunch of books in China, and you're going, I think, with something closer to home. So
yeah.
we'll
I'm
see.
using Comics Wellspring. It's in Wisconsin. I didn't want to. I didn't want to.
Didn't want to risk it.
As a union construction worker,
Yeah,
my family would just smash me if I went to China and printed stuff. You know what I mean?
I got you. I totally get that.
Yeah.
So one of
Now,
the
now
things,
I'm happy. Now I'm happy that I'm printing in this. Well, I was
yeah,
happy. Comics Wellspring. I joke about this, but it's kind of the truth. 2 or 3 days before my campaign goes live, I call
mhm,
Luke Stone, the owner of Fund My Comic, and freak
mhm,
out, and he calms me down. He's like my
yeah,
therapist. Well, 2 or 3 days before I go to print, I call Comic Wellspring and freak out. I seem like a happy-go-lucky guy right now, but right before I'm going to spend thousands of dollars to print, I kind of freak out. And these two women that run the place, they're like, "It's okay, John. They charge me like therapy," but they were good. I'm completely happy. I got boxes of comics wrapped really well, not one damaged copy. Every comic I could sell. Every comic was mint,
yeah.
mint, mint.
I did that. I got the Blackheart trade paperback from the printer that I use in China, and none of those were damaged,
Oh, good.
and everything went great. And I'm going to try them for a comic and see how it goes.
Okay.
One of the things that I did in this case was I went through, and as we started putting out the comics, we got some extra to sell at shows, and a little extra for every issue ended up to be a big stack of extra books. So I went through and did an inventory check, and the issues for sale are a couple of different versions of the current issue 16. And then when you uh, pick one and go sign the waiver, and you go through to that next page with the add-ons, there's a list of just about everything that we've ever printed. So we've sold a lot in dollar volume on stuff on the back end, which is nice.
That's good.
Um, for people that didn't get any copies of the Punchline Tomorrow Girl book from Ben when he did his crowdfunder, I've got some copies of that. We did some signed and remarked copies of the Free Comic Book Day book that were graded by CGC that are in the pile on the add-ons page. So we've got some cool stuff there.
Yeah. I'm gonna play your trailer. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. Let's pause this image for a second. Can everybody see why I said Sydney Sweeney and Trinity? I mean, can't you just
Yeah,
picture them? It's perfect.
that's Carrie Ann Moss.
Carrie Ann Moss. I couldn't picture her name. Yes.
There you go.
There you go.
That's it'd be a good fit. Over the next few issues, we'll probably get some more background on Mel. So issue 17, I've got another few pages left to ink and color. Then that one will be done too, and that has Atomic Butterfly and Versima trying to stop an otherworldly invasion at a music fest. I was, you know, I was at a heavy metal show, and I was like, man, sure, a whole lot of you could sneak in a whole demon summoning routine here, and nobody would ever notice with all this shit on the sides of the amps and the t-shirts and everything. It's like, oh, there's a comic story right there.
Yeah.
Uh,
They got
there's all,
pentagrams on the stage and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah. There's also the
Funny.
that gridlock story, and that's pretty fun. I had a good time inking that because uh, he's a big organic rock monster, so it's really hard to get the graphics wrong when you're drawing it. After that, I've got a couple of pages here if you want to do some prop comedy. Um, this is a page from Punchline 18
Oh, beautiful. Look at that.
where Stephen Cummings penciled that. I inked it. And Versima's been knocked 10 years into the future, and she meets another version of herself who's kind of a bitch. So they don't get along. I call it her Ghost of Christmas Present
Well, let's be
adventure.
fair. If you were to meet a copy of yourself, I don't think I know me and myself would probably come to blows.
Not sure we'd get along, but she while she's running around in the future having adventures, she asks somebody. She said, just randomly to myself, what happened to me? And somebody tells her the truth, says somebody broke her heart and she never got over it and she learned all the wrong lessons from it. So she's she's a very angry person. The Versima that runs Seahome up back then. And here's one of the pages that I've yet to ink from
Oh,
the Mosh Pit Monsters story.
oh, that's the name of the story, the Mosh Pit Monster.
Yep.
Cool.
So I will take one of these. I'll get some pencils in, convert them to blue line, letter on the page, ink it, scan it, get it colored, drop it back under the letters on top of the black and white layer, and tweak the letter a little bit, make sure everything lines up right.
So
I didn't realize
you're
until
still going to heavy
recently.
metal shows and stuff?
I've been going to shows here and there. The last thing I saw, I went to celebrate my birthday. I went to go see the Eagles at the Sphere in Vegas in February, and that was pretty fun.
Yeah, I doubt a mosh pit broke out at the Eagles though.
No, the better chance of somebody getting a broken hip there at that show than anything else.
I used to go all the time to shows. I'm trying to rack my brain to what was the last musical act I saw.
Yeah.
Ah,
So we were on I don't want to say a drinking tour of Las Vegas, but every time we passed a pub, an Irish pub, we would go in and have a few pints. So we found our favorite closest pub was in the first floor of the New York. So we went there on Sunday night after having seen the Eagles on Saturday night. We saw a band that was, had an okay singer, okay bass player, okay drummer, and they had a guy that they called a utility player who was playing like a mandolin and a violin, and then he pulled out an electric guitar, and we're blown away. I was like, holy shit, we saw Joe Walsh last night, and this guy, he's right there with him. And it was just in this tiny little pub. And we're sitting, you know, 20 feet from the stage as he's blowing our eardrums out. But it was fun.
yeah, that's I look around. There's not, you say you don't really go to movies that much anymore, and
Yeah.
there's nothing I want to see in the movies. And now the bands that I like, I'm into punk and metal. They
Yeah.
don't really tour anymore. They're aging out,
Yeah.
or the punk rock bands only made like $15,000 a year, and they're all like truck drivers and gas station
Yes.
guys now.
A buddy of mine asked me if I wanted to go see AC/DC, and at the end of this month, I said, I dropped $2,000 to see the Eagles. I'm a little tapped out. Plus, I got a whole lot of work in front of me and on the comic side. And he said, "Oh, most of them are gone except for the two lead guys." Like, well, I don't want to say that's all you need, but that helps having those guys there.
Yeah.
The thing that was surprising for me for seeing the Eagles at the Sphere was just what a great venue the Sphere is, and how well Vince Gill filled in a lot of those songs for Glenn Fry, who not around anymore. It's not the same, but it's still amazingly well done.
I can't. I'm racking my brain to think what was the last thing I saw. I think it was Big Bad Voodoo Daddy in a
Yeah,
local venue here. Yeah, in Babylon, Long Island. There's a movie theater, but it's like an old fashioned movie theater that has the velvet ropes. It's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
and they show movies, but they also open it up for bands. So it's kind of small. So you could hear them like whispering to each other in between songs. I like that better than the big arena shows. That was fun.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I I get out of my cave every once in a while and go do stuff. I did go see a Spurs game last year. I was hoping to see one this year, but I'm not sure that's going to happen.
And now, my wife likes that show, The Chosen. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's like you know, it's a show about Jesus. So
Yeah,
nobody knows the day to day, but if you're familiar with the New Testament, it's pretty spot on. But they
yeah,
show them in the movie theater before, so we've been going to see that in the movies. And so I just think it's funny. Last Saturday we went double feature. We went to see The Chosen during the morning, went out for for ramen, and then Levon Cade. So it was like
Yeah.
Jesus in the morning, Chuck Dixon at night.
Did you like the Working Man movie?
I did like it. I did like it. I didn't read the book yet, so now I want to read the book, and I'm
Yeah.
glad I didn't read the book, because whenever you read the book and then see the movie, you're always disappointed with the movie. But I find if I see the movie first and then read the book, it doesn't tarnish the movie. Like I saw Starship Troopers first,
Yeah.
and I love that movie so much. I read the book. They're completely different.
Yes.
They're
Heinlein's a different guy.
so if I read that book first and then saw Starship Troopers, I was a bit like, this is ridiculous. This is like a comedy. This
So
isn't the same thing.
part of it is that with filmed entertainment, it is so expensive to make it that you essentially take your source material and you cut it down to the greatest hits. Where when you're making comics or novels or whatever, things that are less expensive to produce, you can just kind of wander off and tell yourself little stories all you want, and
Right.
it doesn't,
That's
you can explore every single possible corner of something as opposed to, well, we're burning $10 million a minute. We need to, do this one thing.
yeah, yeah. I've been saying this. I remember specifically when Terminator 2 came out. What was that? 1992. I
Yeah.
was working at a pizzeria, and my friends all saw it, but I was working and they were talking about it, and I was just like, dude,
Mhm.
man, that sounds awesome. But Jack Kirby did that 30 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, anything that you can imagine on the movie, comic books did it 20, 30 years ago, because they don't have a special effects budget. The special effects budget with Jack Kirby was this pen,
Yeah.
and a piece of paper, which
That's
is why I get so mad when I see comic books of just people sitting around.
yeah, that was a thing, most stories have been told before, but they haven't been told in the way that you're going to tell it.
Right.
Like, if we can talk about current events, I really enjoyed the Mary Sue story
Oh, thank you.
that I lettered.
I wrote that.
Yeah, I know. There's a clever writing device that's used in there where somebody's life story unfolds over the entire story, and it's only 15 pages, and it works. So
Oh, thank you.
that
Thank
story
you.
was the story was good.
Coming from you, that's a big compliment. So thank you. I
Yeah, yeah.
I struggled. I sound so pretentious when I talk about myself as a. I wrote 2 comic books, and now I'm a pretentious writer. But
That's
I struggled over that because I wanted the whole concept of her life is passing before her eyes.
yeah.
You know what I mean? That's basically the story. She's
That's
bleeding
why it
out.
works. Yeah.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
when you say, I don't want to sound pretentious because I've only written 2 comics. It's 2 comics more than most people.
Okay, thank you. You're making me.
Yeah.
I got to go upstairs and
It
take the
takes
garbage out to put to put my ego in check.
it takes a certain amount of confidence and faith and sometimes hope to make something creative and put it out in front of people. It's not always the best thing.
It's funny
It's not
because
easy.
I work with a bunch of rough guys, construction workers, and some of these guys did some serious time,
Yeah.
and you know what I mean. So, and I'm the goofy, happy-go-lucky guy,
Mhm.
I'm the Versima in a world full of Mel's, and I'm telling these people I made comics. Every one of these guys, like I'm talking guys, I don't even want to talk about, when you come out of jail, you still got to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so,
Still got bills to pay. Yeah.
yeah, you know what I mean? It's like you did your time, you got to work. And these guys are like, oh my God, you did something. I'm so proud of you. Like it was really nice. I'm getting emotional thinking about it. But when I got my comic, everybody at work bought a copy of my comic.
It's
So
awesome.
so I pretty much sold more than I did on crowdfunding because they bought it in person because these guys don't want to put in their credit card number and buy a comic
No.
book and wait. They waited till it was printed. And then we set up a trailer and I did a signing.
Well, that's awesome.
So they all waited in line. I took out of the bag, signed the comic. You know what I mean? They were all, and now I'm on a different job, and they're like, "Hey, I heard that you made a comic book." I'm like, "Yeah," and I'm sure they're like, "Oh my God, we got." So, and of course, these guys don't know how to. Not that they don't want to. And I didn't go into a crowdfunding site, typing in their credit card
Yeah.
number. So, I'm giving them like voucher cards to remind them.
See,
I bought a comic.
that's why you got to overprint these things sometimes.
Absolutely. My point being is, you would be nice. It makes you feel good. But these guys at work, like, you said I made two more comics than the average. Everybody in America loves comics.
Yeah.
It's women love comics, men love comics, but the thing is, the comic book market failed the American people, if you ask me. It contracted so fast that people that I work with who love comics, who still have comics in their house
Hmm.
that they fondly think of, are like, they still make them. They never see comic book movies, but they don't know. Like, back in the '90s, there was a comic book store in every town. Now you got to drive to find a and these are guys who, they was like so happy that there's still comic books being made, and they know a guy making them. I don't know. You got me
Yeah.
ranting and raving. You made me feel good.
So
Thank you.
one of the things that comics did, uh, comics have always been kind of considered a marginalized art form. Uh, the EC comics were super violent and bloody and super entertaining, so
Right.
much so that Congress got involved with that and brought the basically in-house censors to look at the books and killed a lot of the things that the EC guys were doing. I mean, there's no real comparison between like tales to crime suspense stories and then psychoanalysis. Pre-code and after code. The after code books were not very readable, but comics have evolved. The direct market evolved to so that stores could be more profitable. So they kind of abandoned the newsstand slowly, and single issues didn't sell as well as these 6, 12 issue chunks of stories. So it's harder to get into most series now, because if you want to read a Batman book, you can't just read a fucking Batman book. You have to read all of them, and they come out every week, and they're all $4 and $5 to start. So it's a challenge. The thing that you know lifts up my spirits about that is that you can find the next generation of readers on a Saturday, leaning up against a book stand at Barnes and Noble, and they're reading manga
Yep.
because you can find uh, if you find a book with a good premise. I really like the Cat Gamer manga book. A woman who's kind of a professional gamer. She's using her gamer skills to make her cat the best cat ever, and it's just the most adorable book ever.
No,
So I've picked up a few of those, and the pitch on those is fine, and you can almost read those things almost in any order, and they still make sense. But you get one satisfying chunk of fiction at a time, and that's not something that the modern comic book market
I
does
absolutely
very
agree with
well.
you. I'm one of seven kids, and I'm the only member of my family to not have children, and everybody else has like five kids, and my
Mhm.
nieces and nephews have kids.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So I'll say that, like, 100 kids, in my immediate family, is that the correct term? But none of them read comics, and almost all of them read manga.
yeah,
They all think it's so cool that I'm making a comic book. Oh, my crazy uncle's making it, and this
yeah,
support my comic and everything like that. And now they all talk to me about manga, and
yeah.
I don't know anything about it because it's a generational thing. Not, people get upset. I don't dislike manga. I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah.
And what I have read, I absolutely loved. And
It's very interesting. It's very expressive, and I think part of its charm, to an extent, is that it's finite. So you
yeah,
can read it and you're done with it. And part of that is, and that's one of those discussions that Mel and Versma have at some point, where Mel says, "Oh, I've had like 3 or 4 secret identities. I was Miss Fury for a while, but I traded it to some girl and she gave me an airplane, and then she was Miss Fury after that." Mel just says, "I don't give a shit about selling lunch boxes or underoos. I'm not in that business. I'm in the business of killing bad guys. It actually is helpful to change identities every 10 or 15 years."
yeah, keep them
So that is completely antithetical to Batman. You
right.
know, he's got to keep selling peanut butter. So, you know, he's not going to
That's what Chuck
change
Dixon
much.
keeps saying. He goes, John, you got to remember, Batman exists to sell lunchboxes and underoos to children.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why he gets so mad when that had that nudity with Batman in it. You know what I mean? Like,
He's there with the IP. Yeah.
yeah. Only in manga can you have a strip like One Piece running 25 plus years, written and drawn by the same creator. Yeah, that is another
Yeah,
selling point. Those
Keith's
those
got a good
Japanese
point.
have a work ethic, man. They,
Hi, Keith. He's got a good point.
yeah, and my nieces and nephews, they all say the same thing. There's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end, and
Yeah,
there's consequences and the stakes.
and you can follow the creator onto another project, and
And they, yeah,
they,
they
the
get confused.
you,
Like,
you
okay,
get
I'm
to
gonna read Batman. Where do I start? Where is it?
yeah.
I just wish they never restarted anything. Just keep the numbering.
I get the feeling that DC is sort of closer to being on the right track because, hey, I'll tell you a story about Keith here in a minute.
Yeah, tell us
Um,
about stories about.
so the thing about DC is that they're sort of on the right track because if you go to a comic shop, you can buy a $10 copy of Watchmen in the little pocket size.
Yes,
That's a shit ton of reading for $10. I'm
right.
not sure it's the best thing for teenagers to be reading because you know most people seem to identify more with Rorschach than is probably healthy.
Yeah,
But they
much,
need
much
to
to
have
Alan Moore's dismay, right?
yes. He's like he's a vicious psychopath. Why is he the hero? It's like the thing is, well, he's the closest thing to a hero in the book, except for maybe
he's the
Night
only
Owl.
one who doesn't compromise. I
Yeah,
Rorschach's my favorite too
yeah,
because of that. Everybody else just basically sells out.
yeah. But
Even
those things are um, sort of evergreen, and thanks to those being $10, those will be around forever.
yeah.
Uh, they did a manga-sized Punchline book, and it's a little pricey, but I'd like to try those out in some bookstores and see how that goes.
Oh, let's look at your campaign.
Okay.
Uh, so you can pledge without a reward,
Mhm.
which people have done to my campaign. Thank you. A digital edition. Oh, $2. I'm thinking $62, guys. $2 for digital edition.
Yeah,
Wow. The standard cover. I forgot what I pledged. The variant cover.
yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Two great covers though. Jeez.
And then uh, uh, two of them.
Yeah, the
So
double.
if you agree to that and then go on to the next page, you sign. Yeah, I know I may never get my stuff, and then you go to the page with all the add-ons. In our case,
Oh, is there
uh,
another page?
all the books are going to be signed. Well, you got to buy something to get to the next couple of
Oh,
pages.
I see. I see.
You know how Kickstarter works.
Yeah,
Um, but what we're doing is we're doing something a little different. All the comics are going to go out and they're going to be signed by me and Renee. And if I can find Matt long enough, I'll see if I can't get him to sign some. So, for $7 plus $4 shipping, you get a signed funny book. So that's
yeah,
pretty good.
and I love the story. Now, again, I pledged, but this isn't my Kickstarter.
Yeah.
I'm always afraid that my credit card information or something like that will get out there. So, could you get back issues? Do you have a
Yeah.
catch up or anything like that? Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
so important to let people.
So,
Comic book people are compulsive. They want to read everything, and it's a good read, guys. I recommend. The art is
yeah,
good.
it's
Everything is
fun.
good about it. It's a good comic book story. It's the
So,
Janus contract. I can't help but think of the Judas contract. Is that purposely inspired?
no, I got the same level of dyslexia, so I have to make sure that I spell it right and say it right when I'm talking about it. No, Janus is the Roman god with two faces,
Right.
and I'm stealing from Alan Moore. That was the Janus was the name of the switchboard operator in Top Ten. I was like, I have to steal that name.
Yeah.
I have to steal that name, but not name as a character, but maybe name as a story.
Yeah.
So I'm working in
Taking
comics.
mythological names is not stealing. They
Yeah,
belong to everybody. Like, if you want to, you could have a Thor character as long as he
I
doesn't look
would
like Marvel's.
I would pay royalties to somebody, but it's hard to find descendants 2000 from 2000 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm working in comics because of Keith Wilson.
Okay.
So we both lived in Austin, and at the time he had moved back to Austin uh, from New York, and where he was in editorial at DC, and he was inking a book called Hammerlock over Chris Sprouse, and he needed somebody to come in and help him with backgrounds. So I had done some terrible looking comic book pages, but they proved that I could start and finish something. So Keith trained me on how to do backgrounds, and I've been sort of drawing ever since. And I went up to Dallas last year, year before, and helped him scan in a whole bunch of Hammerlock pages to do something with in the future. So now every time I'm up in Dallas, I'm happy to see Keith.
And Chris Sprouse, wow, he's a phenomenally underrated artist.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of the first time I became aware of Chris Sprouse. Was it the Alan Moore Supremes? Speaking of Alan Moore,
Maybe he did a Batman annual that was inked by Steve Mitchell, and he did Hammerlock, and then he did the Legionnaires series where they all were like teens.
yeah, that he is so good. Man, I would
He did like some fill-in pages for random projects. But one of his big launches was the Tom Strong book for ABC,
ah,
and then he's been mostly working in the Star Wars department over at Marvel ever for the last few years.
the
He's
world
done some
building and
beautiful
the,
books.
the way that Tom Strong world works, that's what I'm trying to go for.
Yeah,
If I could do a tenth of what Alan Moore did in Tom Strong, people give Alan Moore a lot of he's a grouchy old curmudgeon, stuff like that. But Tom Strong is such a hopeful blue sky comic.
both things can be true.
Yeah.
Yeah, his Tom Strong book was great, and I had a page of Chris's art,
Oh wow.
and I've been selling off stuff to bankroll some of the things I've been up to. And I put up a page with Tom and Tesla Strong from later on in the run, I think issue like 14 or 15. And a guy reached out and he said, "I'll give you 400 for it." I said, I put up a Robin cover and it sold for way more than I thought it would. So I'm going to let the market decide. And he said, 800. I said, "All right, deal." I said, "You must be a huge Chris Sprouse fan." He goes, "Yeah, I guess, but it's Alan Moore writing it and the words are on the page." So there's a certain charm to original art pages that have the text actually on the page. And he was just a huge Alan Moore fan. So he wanted a page
Love
that
to
Alan
have
Moore had written.
Alan Moore come on my channel to the point I forget who I was talking to, but they said in England you could write a letter to Bill Williams in Texas. I don't think I'm you said Austin.
There's
So
a lot of us.
Bill
Yeah.
Williams, Austin, Texas. Put it in the mail, and it will get to you in England. Like you
Yeah.
don't need to. So I found out what town Alan Moore lives, and I hand wrote an invitation. Would you come on my channel? So let's see if Alan Moore ever comes. Alan Moore and John Byrne are like the holy grails of.
You know, I started reading comics in the mid 70s, and I love John Byrne stuff. I didn't realize how good we had it there when Byrne was working all the time.
Yeah.
I even followed him. I really loved his Star Trek, Star Trek Dr. McCoy book because it was
Yeah,
just so
you're
weird.
you're like the third person that I this month that was talking about John. I never read John Byrne Star Trek stuff.
Yeah.
I gotta go and read them.
I
Who
don't
else?
want to I don't want to say that it's real fan servicey, but the stuff with, Bones and Kirk and Spock, that can be a little fan servicey. This is just McCoy off on his own having some adventures, and he's I think he's got his beard in some of those comics, but uh Byrne is an amazing draftsman, and his stuff's just really, still phenomenal. And he still kicks out commissions, but they're huge and expensive commissions. I'm like,
Yeah,
"Oh, that's
yeah.
cool."
Well, he's the apex of comic book art, if you ask me. I just want to say hello, Courtney. I haven't seen you in a long time. Good to see you, Courtney. How's everything? I love Tom. If people ask me what's your favorite Alan Moore stuff, it's Tom Strong.
Yeah,
It's clever. It's hopeful. It's a good guy that you could root for. You
yeah.
know, and I know people talk about like there's some let's just say untasteful stuff in Alan Moore, but you know what, Batman people get beat up in a Batman story, like not that I'm justifying that this is okay and that's okay, but like villains do villainous stuff,
Yeah,
so
that's what makes them villains. I
and
really
and
go ahead.
and if you read Heroic Tales #1, both villains this the second part was an origin of a villain, and Dr. Robug was all goofy and everything. If you read between the lines, both of them were doing horrible things because they're bad guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the patriarch stopped people from doing horrible things because he's a good guy. And one guy accused me of endorsing it. It's like, dude, does that mean Mike W. Barr is a murderer because he wrote the Joker killing people? Get off your high horse.
Yeah.
What, I'm supposed to have bad guys that just do what, like steal ice cream cones from little kids? Which I do, by the way. That's the one crime I do.
Oh, nice. Yeah, but that was something that struck me recently, that Byrne's been drawing superhero comics for 50 years at this point.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just a ton of output. But because at one point he was drawing like 2 monthly books plus covers plus other stuff.
Yes. There's a website there's a couple of websites that dedicated to John Byrne. And I think they said in one particular month he did almost 4 full issues.
Yeah.
Which is amazing output.
Some of those issues were the page count on some of those was a little shorter, but that's a crap ton of work.
Now I got to ask you, what's your favorite John Byrne? Excuse me.
I really like this Iron Fist stuff.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. That's a good pick.
I thought that was sort of, in a lot of ways, peak Claremont and peak Byrne, because they've got this dude who does kung fu interacting with weird little corners of the Marvel universe, and that carried over into the Marvel team up issues.
That's a forgotten John Byrne, Cliff Claremont.
Yeah,
run. Yeah. Those
I liked the X-Men stuff, but it's kind of been so dredged and so yammered about over the years. It works.
It works, but let's stop dealing with Days of Future Past guys.
Yes. Well, we need that, like we need one more Spider-Man 300 homage cover.
Yeah.
But the thing about Iron Fist and how it's different to an extent from the X-Men, even though same guys made the same books, there's a whole lot of introspection and a whole lot of mission statements in the X-Men. And in Iron Fist, there's just people kicking the shit out of each other.
And well choreographed fights too,
Yes.
which I took for granted until I had to write a fight scene. Patriarch fights Robug in issue number 1, and Patriarch is fighting the Subterranean in issue 2. And you're just tempted to just say, fill it with 2 pages of fighting, and let the artist deal with it. But, I'm trying to choreograph it, and it is tougher than you think, because
it is
hard in comics.
It is a little complicated, and that doesn't really work well with everybody. I've got a guy that I'm working with on a new project that is a D&D style project about a female warrior. I don't want to say it's Red Sonja with less imaginative armor, but that's part of it. And I said, page so and so, go nuts, draw a big fight scene. And the guy I'm working with on that is completely stalled. So I may have to go in and break it down for him. But I think fantasy is one of those genres that's not completely fully explored, where you've really got to reach down and dig deep to find some sort of part of the superhero genre that hadn't been thoroughly strip mined.
Ellie says his favorite John Byrne's the Starbrand run, tied up the new universe nicely.
Yeah,
I forgot he did that too. I mean, my favorite is obviously the X-Men.
Yeah.
It's just, to me, that's peak comics, and then the Fantastic Four, just because the Fantastic Four are my favorite. But so good.
His Fantastic Four run was really good, and it's really inexpensive compared to his X-Men run, even though one stopped and the other one started about the same time, so about the same skill level. But you can pick up his FF books for $5 a piece and get nice copies.
Yeah, and I those are probably my most reread. I just love that. But but again, my favorite. I'm now jumping from John Byrne to Alan Moore. I don't know why I was going to say Tom Strong when that's Alan Moore. But I would love. I actually emailed him a script of Heroic Tales #1 like I shoot for the moon, right? Why not?
Yeah, yeah,
John Byrne's going to come out of retirement to draw my script. You know what I mean? But you don't get what you don't ask for, so
that's true.
yeah, I could just see him just like, what do the kids call it? Swipe left, swipe left.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're out. Boom.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my favorite stuff. I'm a big fan of Jim Apato's stuff from the '70s.
Oh yes, he's my favorite Batman artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, I sort of like him a little more than Adams from that time period because he's just a little bit more cartoony. But there's a sweet spot when he has like a good like a really good 5 year run in there when he comes over from Charlton. He's doing Aquaman, he's doing Batman stories, he's doing Brave and the Bold stuff. He worked another 20 years after that. So if you just are introduced to his work by his later work, he had inkers come in that he wasn't hugely happy with. But that early Aparo Batman DC stuff in the '70s, pretty
Yeah.
stunning.
Yeah. He also did Metamorpho, I think.
I think he drew everybody in Brave and the Bold.
Yeah, when I close my eyes and daydream about Batman, it's still drawn by Jim Aparo.
Yeah, everybody's got that lean going on.
Yeah, and the men have this like just classic rugged
Yeah,
men looks.
everybody in there looks like a movie star.
Yeah, he's a guy that's not known for his beautiful women, but his women are beautiful.
Yeah,
And you know who else gets a bad rap for women? But John Buscema. I'm reading his Tarzan
yeah.
run, and he drew Jane. This people are gonna cut this out of context and put me on Twitter, but Jane was like tied up, and I was just like, this is a beautiful, beautiful drawing of a woman. He always said that he looked like that his women looked like masculine. Like, I don't think I'm gonna be too controversial when Jack Kirby wasn't really known for beautiful women. Like, once in a while he would draw, but overall, like Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby's women weren't really the kind of stuff that you'd pin up, put on your airplane bunker, and But a Neil Adams woman, or
when people in Thor are mentioning the beautiful Sif, you're like, all right,
yeah, if you say so. She's got
I'm
nice
playing,
legs.
I'm playing along.
If you like thick legs, there you go. Yes,
Yeah.
they all do look like James Garner. Rockford Files. Yes.
Yep.
Oh, this is a good choice. Jose Luis Garcia is my Batman. Yes. He if not for Jim Aparo, it would be Luis Garcia. But almost everything DC would be him.
Another guy who's a genius. Yeah.
He's my that's what Wonder Woman looks like in my mind.
Yep.
Yeah. His artwork is on my underoos. I forgive me for coughing. They were welding at work, and I walked right into a cloud.
Yeah.
And I could feel it coming up. But I lost my train of thought because I coughed. But oh yeah, when you see merchandise, when you go to a store and they're selling comic book merchandise, it's all 30, 40-year-old images.
Yes.
You see John Byrne on T-shirts. You see Jim Lee sometimes, but you never see, like, I can't even think of the new guys. It's like, dude, somebody in charge of accounting over at Marvel and DC must be like, we're selling John Romita Spider-Man stuff. Why don't we get art that looks like this in the modern comics?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I walk.
You see a lot of guys that do Spider-Man work, and their work's good, and it really fits in with the time. I really like Scott Campbell's work, and he does a ton of Spider-Man stuff.
Yes.
But you just don't always see a ton of that on the merch. I mean, if you look at Keith's right.
Yeah, I gotta say, I've always had a crush on Big Bart.
Big Bart is pretty awesome. You like somebody who can just lay the smack down on bad guys or
If I may be crude for a second, my girlfriend in high school was 6'2", and and I'm 5'8", so the joke was, "Hey, John goes up on her." She looked like a like a Kirby woman,
yeah,
Kirby hips and everything. So yeah,
that's awesome. But
yeah, I messed that up.
a lot of guys are drawing superhero stuff now, but you do see a lot of throwback vintage Marvel and DC product out there.
Oh, I just got distracted because a couple of people just bought my comic. Thank you. If you're watching, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. You know,
appreciate it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, I could hire Jim. I could hire Jim. Who the hell's Jim? I could hire Bill for another issue. And Jim. Why not?
There you go.
I'll hire everybody.
I'm the cheapest person on the team. The guy you got to keep happy is Renzo. Renzo's doing a great job.
Yeah, Renzo is awesome. You know,
Remember when we first talked? I said you got lucky. Renzo's an effing genius. That was true.
he's so good, and he's so happy, and he's so pleasant,
Yeah.
and he's really quick. He just has a lot of obligations right now. You know, he's working with a lot of people.
Last time I talked to him, I had written a 12-page story that I was interested in having him draw, and it's an unconventional story, and it's a Mel story, and it's pretty fun. And he had 3 clients. I said, okay, let me talk to you in a couple of months. You still got 3 clients? Yes. Talk to him a couple of months later. You still have three clients? He goes, yes. I said, I'm going to have to reassign that thing because I really wanted to ink him, but he
He
draws
also
really
inks
well.
himself. You
Hmm?
know, he also inks himself.
We talked about that, and I think that was a big stumbling block for him doing the project. But my business plan has me selling original art pages to recoup some of the money I pay the freelancers. So I kind of need to ink it to make it happen.
And he mostly does digital too.
Yeah.
So he just asked me. He goes, John, now what would you prefer that I do? I said, I'm not a micromanager guy. Whatever you want to do, and I can't draw to save my life, and I'm going to tell you how I want you to draw. So whatever you're doing is working.
Yeah.
So he said that his traditional pen and pen is faster than computer, but the computer is easier to fix changes.
Yes.
So you know what I mean? So I said, do whatever you want to do. I said, but I'll, for every campaign, whatever you have, we'll put it on the campaign and try to sell it for you.
Yeah.
But I get first dibs on the covers, everybody. I'm just letting you know. Fair is fair.
Yeah. I read I at random picked up a book of legends and flipped through it. I found a really interesting story, and I thought, this is just about a perfect story. It's the story of the knight and the greyhound, and it's just this heartbreaking story that has a lot of truth in it. That it's so true that they built a statue to the greyhound in the story. Because it's I guess I have to tell it now. So there's a rich and powerful knight. I'm gonna tell a very short version of it. There's a rich and powerful knight who has a big estate. He's got a fabulous family, including an infant son who means the world to him, and he's got a trusted retainer who's this greyhound. So they go to tournament one day and leave the kid, the greyhound, and a bunch of nannies behind to take care of the castle. And unbeknownst to the knight, there's a serpent in his garden that comes up out of the earth, slithers into the house, and looks for something to eat. And the greyhound steps in between that and the kid. They have a terrific fight, and the greyhound takes a lot of damage, but he kills the snake. But in the fight, the kid's bassinet's overturned, and the kid's room is destroyed, and the snake's body is buried in the debris. So the nurses come in, and they see the dog and think that he's killed the kid, and they run screaming out of the courtyard, greet the knight. The knight comes in, looks down, and goes, "Oh my God, my best friend, how could you do this to me?" Whack!
Oh no.
Kills the greyhound. And then he hears his kid, and he goes over and he goes, "What did I just do?" So in the story that I wrote, Mel is telling that story to her kid. And she said, after the career I had, I sort of feel like the greyhound in this story. And I'm telling you this story because I over identify with this character. That's not who I really am, probably. But I'm going to go start a war so I can get revenge on the people who poisoned you. And then she goes and starts a war. But, I was really looking forward to inking um, Renzo on that story. But it just didn't happen. So I'll need to
And
find
he
some sort
and
of other way to produce that.
he could do different styles too.
Yeah.
he's going to be doing two completely different styles in my like the Mary Sue. You already started the Renzo
Yeah.
artwork page, but we got a little 3-page thing in there that he's doing. I'm being vague on purpose. That's
Yeah,
going to be
yeah.
a really different style. And then I, I I was asking him, could you do like a Rob Liefeld story style? And he goes, yeah. So I was like, all
Yeah.
right. So we might
But
do something in a Rob Liefeld story set in the '90s later
that's
on.
awesome. Everybody gets extra pouches. But I
Yeah.
looked into that Greyhound story, and it turns out it's a folk tale, and they built a statue to that dog somewhere, and people make a pilgrimage to go see it. So, like a lot of
I
folk
tell you,
tales,
you make
maybe
a
it's true.
story where the dog dies,
Yes,
you're gonna have to lock
you're gonna
yourself
have
up.
people weeping. Yeah,
And I will say this: Heroic Tales #5 has a boy and his dog story, and a kaiju.
I was
So,
about to say, hopefully not the Harlan Ellison one.
oh, no,
Oh
no,
no, it's super violent, but
oh, well,
fun.
I'll just leave it at that. I give too. Marcus is here, and he always tells me I give away too many spoilers.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've
What was that? A cat just walked in
me.
behind you?
Oh yeah,
Okay, I just
it's
saw a
right behind
tail.
me.
Yeah.
So the cat's going to come in, look at the food bowl, sit down, think about writing a letter to the management about the low quality of the current food here, and then eat it for 5 minutes and then wander off.
Yeah, I tease my wife because we have two cats. The boy cat is a mama's boy. Oh my god, my wife can't take 2 steps without this cat. Like, oh my god, I
Under her
can't feed
feet.
her.
Yeah.
The girl cat, she loves me. She looks at me with love in her, and I send my wife memes like, you feed her, you take care of her, you change the litter box, and everything, and he still loves me more. She's like, that hurts my feelings. Cats are they
Yeah,
pick one person.
pets, as long as they're getting plenty of food, they're generally happy. And
Yeah.
Quinn gets plenty of food.
Yeah. Well, I have it's clobbering time at 8:30, so we'll close this down now. And of course, everybody's invited at 8:30. Clobbering time. DC versus Marvel. Open invite. What do you like better? Why do you like better? What do you? It's supposed to be where kids back in the comic book store. Spider-Man can beat up Batman. It's a lot of fun.
It sounds like a who's who of clobbering.
Yeah, yeah. We do a lot of it's one of my favorite things I do on the channel. It's an open invite, so I invite everybody, in 15 minutes to come back and tell us why you like this better, why you hate that more. Keep it fun though. It's supposed to be fun comic book nonsense.
There you
And
go.
we'll bring up your campaign again over here. I love this comic. It's no secret. I wear my heart on my sleeve about everything. I really really enjoy it. I can't wait for it. I loved your last crowdfunded Blackheart. That was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
That was a Bill Willingham script, and I did the inks on that and the publishing on it. But yeah, it was a fun book.
yeah, that was
Glad you
from
liked it.
Heroic Tales also.
Yep.
The 90s your comic Heroic Tales. And
Yep.
Blackheart is like a Batman. But man, I don't want to spoil it again. It's your book, but I didn't read that story, so it kind of shocked me the what happened. It
Yeah.
was good, a good shock. I
Yeah.
was like, I got a little mad at him.
Yeah. I can see why.
Yeah, it was good though. I really like it. I'm looking forward to this. And he always delivers his comics, and they're always enjoyable. I know I got emails from people. I'd love to back your stuff. I like you, but I don't trust crowdfunding. Bill, you could trust. Everything comes out, on time.
So today I was doing the final production work to send it off to the printer, and my campaign wraps a week from tomorrow. So it will probably be at the printer where they're doing their tweaks on it before the campaign ends. So this is not one of those where we got the money, we're going to Hawaii. When we get back, we'll get started on that comic.
It's
No.
funny. It's funny that you said that because I was in a car accident and I was out of work and I'm sitting on my Heroic Tales 1 money.
Yeah.
Like I was on disability. I'm like, this disability takes like 2 months to go through. Like, how do I pay the mortgage?
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at that money, and I'm like, I can't touch it. I can't touch,
Yeah.
Like, so that's what I did.
You were very lucky though. You came out of that. That could have gone a lot differently.
Yes, 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 yeah. My the brain and spine surgeon pointed at me and says, "You have no idea how lucky you are." And my wife is like, "He was chopping with a chainsaw yesterday." She goes, "Are you out of your mind?"
Oh, that's good though.
Because if you're not in pain, you don't realize that you're damaged, right? Because
Generally,
I wasn't in any pain, so I'm like, "How can I be bad? Nothing
yeah,
hurts." It hurts. It hurts standing up, but it doesn't. My neck doesn't hurt, so it must not be bad. So I was helping my neighbor with gardening and stuff,
yeah.
and then
Sometimes it hurts to do nothing. So there's
yeah,
that temptation when you're ill to get up and cause trouble, and it's hard to resist that urge.
that's what it was. After like 3 weeks, after 3 weeks, I was like, I got to get moving. I got to get, I move all day, every day in construction.
Yeah.
I'm lifting and moving and doing stuff. But I got to say, after about a month and a half, you succumb to the laziness.
Yes.
Now, I was just putting on weight. I was just like, I'm going to eat another Twinkie. Why not? What else am I going to do? I got nothing else to do today but eat this Twinkie and eat the next Twinkie. Three pots of coffee and then stay awake just to eat more Twinkies. It was getting bad.
That's nice.
Yeah,
Good you're keeping Hostess in business.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm back to losing weight though. At least,
That's good.
yeah, I was
Walking
too.
walking around in all the gear you have to wear at work, that'd probably help.
Yeah, I and this job that I'm on now, I didn't realize that my phone keeps track of your steps. Like, because I used to have an Apple Watch, I used to keep track. I was like, wow, I did 12,000 steps today. I did 12. I was consistent. This job, I was consistently 22,000 steps, carrying something.
It's a
So
long day. When
yeah.
we went to Vegas, we walked the strip pretty hard and drank pretty hard. Everything was long, but I got in 50,000 steps in 3 days.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say one day. Geez, wow, that is amazing. But,
No,
yeah,
I'd be dead if I tried that.
I'm trying to look. Why can't I find where my steps are? But it doesn't matter. This is boring. Talking about my steps. But I'm gonna
A
get
little
going.
bit.
I give myself a couple of minutes to prepare for its clobbering time.
Thanks for everything, John. I
A lot of
appreciate it.
fun. Yeah, I enjoy when you come here. It's a lot of fun. Check out Punchline 16. It's on Kickstarter right now. I really enjoy this comic. I can't wait. It's just great superhero comics, but more than that, it's got mythology. It's got spies. It's got everything.
It does have everything.
All right. Bye bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. I'll play my trailer and we'll be gone.